Hello and welcome to this interview that is in the series all about empowering a league of extraordinary mothers on how to use the power of food to boost our energy, get the body we love and the zest for life that we crave. Today, we are so fortunate to have Kirsty Wirth, who has been called the gut guru. As an intuitive healer, Kirsty is the founder of Kultured Wellness, a company whose mission is to inspire and educate people to take control of their health. Thank you so much for being with us, Kirsty.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here for this one.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I know it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I'd love to start with your story and how you got into the work that you do. So can you share that with us?
Yeah, look, it's I suppose I'm like everyone that, ends up in this area of health and wellness because I've had my own journey of having to deal with my health crisis and also my child and my son Noah having lots of issues and through all of that, discovering what's going on with our health and with, obviously the gut being my main area of focus. So when I was pregnant with my son Noah, I had pretty extreme diarrhea and some pretty horrendous symptoms, gut symptoms, but also some real mental health issues and also lots of pain. But I just didn't think anything about it, and you just soldier on and you just think, oh, well, whatever. I had no concept or understanding that my health during pregnancy would have such an impact on my son's life. So, as he came out, it was a really traumatic birth for him. I had a lot of issues during labour and he had to be taken away from me, so we didn't have a lot of that time to connect and to share. And look, he did develop, pretty well. He didn't sleep well. He was unsettled. He always had an upset tummy. There was a lot of problems breastfeeding, all of those sorts of things. But it wasn't until around 13 months he got giardia. And so he just had the whole chronic diarrhea. And, we didn't have it tested. So we were just, told by the pediatrician, look, it's just, toddler diarrhea. He will grow out of it. And I had the same thing. And, it was just both so horrific, but we had no answers. Yeah. And then, he got it again at 15 months and this real sort of chronic episode. And along with that, he, around 12 months, he was doing really well developmentally, and he was walking and kicking a soccer ball and, talking and having all of, those milestones that we expect. But by about 15 months, a lot of those milestones had stopped and he started sort of regressing, and we started seeing changes in him that, obviously as parents, it's quite alarming. So, we kept trying to work out what was going on for him and supporting him. And then at 3.5, Noah was diagnosed with autism. And the picture for his autism diagnosis was really, really confronting for us. So it was certainly around that he probably won't be very verbal. He certainly won't be, functional with his language. He probably won't go to, a typical school. He won't reach life's milestones. He'll probably live with you for the rest of your life. And this is what's going to happen for you guys. So you've got to be ready for that and front up to it. And, we sort of went home and started that grieving process of, oh my gosh, what's happening here? What's going on? And then, my husband just, he's an emergency nurse, and he's just started questioning, look, if you guys were in hospital, we'd have you in the gastro clinic, and, he would take our pulse and do all these sorts of things. And he's like, I'd be calling codes on you right now. Like your blood pressure is so low, your oxygen saturation is so low. Everything is not fine. Bloods are coming back, they're not fine, but no one can sort of piece those things together. And then, eventually we just sort of took matters into our own hands and started investigating what is going on with our gut health and why is this happening. And through a series of really specific tests and trying to find the right person to support us, we found that we both had Clostridium difficile, we both had a lot of small intestinal bacterial overgrowths and infections, and we were able to kind of break that down and understand that and how is that affecting us if we've got those things going on. And yeah, moving forward, when Noah was 5, we went to Canada and we were part of a research study over in Canada where myself, my daughter and Noah all had fecal microbial transplants. Cut things open. It's not that dramatic. It's, we had someone else's microbial community popped into us, and we started to grow our own new microbial community. So I always joke we have Canadian guts, which is pretty funny. And then we subsequently had more when we got back to Australia. We had Australian donors. So we have a mixture of North American and Australian guts. And look, it was just like life-changing. Yeah. For me, like my pain went away. I suddenly had a different mental state. Like it was just so stark from one day to the next. And, I had formed stools and I didn't have the gas and the bloating and the distension. And I could just cognitively, I could actually function. I could listen, I could process thoughts. I had energy, like I actually could stay awake without having sleeps during the day. And, and Noah just, he was just a different child. He started literally speaking the next day after his FMT, and they started out with a few functional words, like he'd point and say there's a train. I'm like, I didn't even know he knew the word train. So it was all in there. Wow. But he couldn't get it out. And so slowly but surely, as he was able to absorb nutrients and he was able to digest his food and his gut started to work. It takes a long time after an FMT for things to really embed and start working. Yeah, we just started to see him improve and grow and develop and, get a sense of humour and sleep and have energy and have fun with this little boy, as opposed to just, clinging on for dear life and hoping that, our whole world is not going to fall apart. And yeah, and so now, fast forward sort of 5 years and he's just doing so well. I mean, he really didn't develop for 5 years. So we're piecing all those bits of the puzzle back together again and really supporting him, and especially cognitively for his brain to keep developing. And, he's in a mainstream school and he's got little buddies and he goes out rock climbing with us and camping and surfing, and, he just continues to do better. And the same for me. Like, I just feel like every sort of 6 months, another great hurdle happens and I improve. And so through all of that, I just can't seem to keep quiet about gut health, really, because I'm pretty, you can't go through a journey like that and go, oh yeah. And when you see so many other people around you really not thriving, and you're just like, oh, if only you knew it was your gut. Yeah. It's, and what are you feeding your body, and what are you, how are you living your lifestyle to nourish those gut microbes? So yeah, it's, it's become this great passion and a big journey out of, and also honouring Noah. He's been through the most traumatic experience that anyone, you don't want anyone to go through it. And I feel like to honour him and what we've learned, it's very important to share so other children can benefit from his experience, and other, adults, everyone. So yeah, it's been a pretty big adventure.
I don't imagine when you started the invention, you thought that the magic pill was going to be poo.
No. And you know what? Just to gross people out even more, we had to have it from the top down.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah, we had it from every angle you can imagine. So, and and obviously we won't go into that today, but that's very important that, there's a lot of new science out there, and it's important to understand all these sorts of things. But yeah, we... Oh, it was crazy.
I just think it's absolutely and utterly fantastic. I just think it's so fantastic. There's going to be so many people listening to this that have no concept of or have never heard of fecal transplants, and that it's even a thing, let alone that there is so much hope available to people to turn this picture of ill health around.
Yeah.
I mean, the rates of autism now, I mean, I've lost track. I haven't read the current statistics, but they're pretty alarming.
It's about 1 in 50 at the moment, and it just it's scary. It's really scary. And And, not everyone needs to have an FMT. And, we had a really specific infection, the Clostridium difficile, and we know that the FMT is so powerful for that specific Clostridium difficile. But we know now that there are so many awesome, easy, everyday life changes that you can make to completely turn your life around without having to sort of go to that extreme. It was just for our family, we had to. But yeah, what I've learned out of all of that is that most people don't have to embark on such a big journey to change their gut. And
there's a few sighs of relief going on around the globe. It's like,
I know. Thank goodness I don't have to go down that track. Even when I was looking at, you can only imagine, like, really, is this our choice to go to the other side of the world where it's minus 25 degrees, it was freezing, and go into this lab and be involved? Is this it? And I remember telling my grandfather, who at the time would have been about 95, 96, and I was like, so Papa, and he's like, oh, for goodness sakes, that's what they do with the cows when they're born. If they're not well, then the elephants do that too. This is no big deal. Get over there and get on with it.
Yeah.
And that was so settling for me, because he was like, well, the farmers, if the cows are sick when they're born, or the calves are sick, it's the first thing they do. The farmers do it. So let's not make such a big deal out of it. So that was so comforting for me that he was able to.
a little bit of wisdom. We like that.
Yeah. I needed it at the time. I sure did.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's take it back to the start. Why do we need to give so much focus to the gut? And, keeping in mind that you were talking about, mental health as well. So help us to understand the role that all these beautiful bacteria are playing in our physical and mental health.
Yeah, I think we're pretty well, there's a good understanding around the fact that if you've got bloating, or if you've got diarrhea, or if you've got some gas, if it's, burning when it's exiting, all those sorts of things, most people can make that connection that there's something going on within their gut. And I think most people do understand that. I think what we don't understand is that really powerful impact that it does have on other systems in the body. Yep. And this is where it's all so exciting, and it's all coming out at the moment. We know that a significant amount of our neurotransmitters that are used in our brain to make us feel awesome. Yep. We don't just suddenly wake up and we're happy and we're motivated and we just jump out and have all this energy. Our body needs to do so many things to be able to make that happen. And all of that begins within our gut. We often think, oh, my brain's scrambled, or I don't feel happy or sad today. And everyone thinks about up here. But little do we know it all starts down in our gut. And so if you're just not rocking your day, or not feeling like you've got a buoyant mood, the first place that you need to look is at your gut. But this is really new. But if you think about it, we talk about butterflies in our stomach when we go out on stage to perform or something. We have known this for so long, but we just haven't drawn this connection to these significant mental health conditions that we're seeing now. So it's really important to step out beyond, I've got diarrhea, it must be my gut. I've got other conditions or feelings or things that I'm, struggling with. Let's have a look at the gut. Yeah. The gut also helps us so significantly with our immune response. And so if we don't have that beautiful microbial community, which is just your little bugs in your gut that produce all of our immune cells that help us fight and stay robust, if that's not thriving, we just catch everything and we can't fight it off. And what I see with a lot of my clients is they catch it and then it just beds down in the body. Yeah. And it's just this low grade undercurrent, infection that they've got. So it never really flares to be, in bed for 5 days horrible, but it's there. And so they're just always feeling flat and fatigued and can't sleep, or brain fog or can't think right, you know, those kinds of really sort of low grade stuff, which is what we see a lot now, as opposed to that sort of big extreme of not feeling great or, the opposite of just feeling great. So our immune system is all happening in our gut. And so, you know, if you're constantly catching things, got to look at your gut. And even things like your skin. You know, if you're breaking out all around here, you know, your gut's not absorbing your hormones and not helping to pass that through in your stool and out of your body. You're recirculating that. Your gut, you know, supports the building of so many mechanisms that help us excrete toxins and absorb toxins. You know, it helps with, huge impact on fertility. I mean, the list goes on of what can happen down there, but the real basics that I really love people to get a really good grasp on is that digestion to assimilate your nutrients, that immune response, which is just vital to keep up with, you know, life, kids, you know, job, this, that, and the other, and your passions and what you're excited about. And of course, you know, with that buoyant mood and that energy. And this is your gut. And, you know, we don't want to get, you know, technical and go down all those rabbit warrens, but think about those three big guns. Yeah. And do they affect you? And okay, they do. So where do I go now?
Yeah. So where do we get these beautiful bacteria from? Where does it start?
Yeah. So it starts from a thriving mother. Which I wasn't. So, we get our bacteria when we pass on down through the birth canal when we're born. Yep. And so traditionally, we would pass on through down our birth canal, and our mothers have this robust gut microbiome, and we grab it on the way through, and that starts life. And with
picturing these little baby hands grabbing.
Can I have some? Yeah. You know, and that as the child's bathed in those beautiful microbes, and that's what's, you know, starts, it sends messages to that little new life to go, you know what? It's safe. Yep. I'm happy, I'm safe. The blood literally, you know, sends messages that we're all cool. We don't need to increase any cortisol. We don't need to be stressed out. No adrenaline needed. We are cool. Now, that's the beautiful picture. And then with those new microbes that are developing in a child, they have the right microbes to digest mum's milk, which is so important. And mum is producing the kind of milk that is going to help that child thrive by, you know, you're a little factory in there. You've got to have all of those mechanisms working correctly. On the flip side, unfortunately, like what happened to my son, I had all these infections. And so when he went on down, he just inherited infections, really no beneficial microbial community. And so when he came out, his body, because of the infections, was just like, this is not safe. This is not a great environment. I'm on high alert because I've got to be fighting this stuff all the time. And so, of course, you come out unsettled, unhappy, no microbes to digest mum's milk, and suddenly you've got breastfeeding problems. Suddenly you're on formula, and there is your start in life. Yeah. So that's kind of how it all starts. And then obviously we have this children that are being born via C-section, and there is no opportunity to grab microbes on the way through. And so they really start by coming into contact with microbes on people's skin that they touch, or in, you know, when they're laid down in the hospital on, you know, the weighing machines, or when, you know, when they're getting measured, and whatever microbes are there is what they lay down for their foundations for life. Yeah. And so, you know, it's big. It's really, really big. And then that's what we develop and start with, and then obviously what we eat and what our first foods are. And if we're playing in the dirt, and if we're exposed to, you know, natural environments versus air conditioning and chlorinated water and all that sort of stuff, you can see how you can divert so rapidly into two very different stories.
I think in Australia we have the highest C-section rate in the world, or one of.
Yeah, and elective, quite a lot of elective. Yeah.
So it starts to paint some of the picture when we look at all the statistics of all these children with these chronic illnesses. It starts to paint the first steps, the beginning picture of why this is happening.
Yeah, and you know, and you sort of strip it back and you look at it. Okay, so mum had an autoimmune condition. She had Hashimoto's, and then she gave birth, and then 3 years later, child's been diagnosed with autism or learning, issues or developmental issues. And it doesn't have to be autism. It can be dyslexia. It can be, just sleeping problems. It can be little, but that then compounds over their growth and as they develop into pretty significant mental health issues as they become, teenagers and adults.
Yeah. All right, so we've got this picture of possibly a disrupted microbiome. The bacteria that we want there is not there. So what's next?
Okay, so what's next is some really great, simple, foundational, little daily things that you can do. So, and that's what I love about this whole gut space, is that it's not expensive, and obviously I'm a big fan of testing, and so that does require finances, but the real basic stuff, like we can get out in nature. So where do we get our microbes from? Obviously we get them from our mum, but where else are they? How can we top up our tank on a daily basis? And it is all in nature, in the dirt, in the ocean, in the air. And so, I obviously work with a lot of families, and, when children are really struggling and there's a lot going on, I literally okay, mum, take your child out and roll them like a sausage in the dirt. I want to see them covered from head to toe in dirt. So obviously it's dirt out in the national park. It's not, dirt that's been sprayed with glyphosate and all of that kind of stuff. But
not on the footy field. No.
Not on the footy field, no. But nature is this best place to start. It's free and it's fun and it's the best way to share with your family. So getting out to nature is very important. And then ensuring that the food that you're eating is growing and nurturing your beautiful gut microbes. So they are this incredible little organisms that need nurturing and, need to ensure that they've got their right environment so they can multiply. And we want them to keep multiplying. So they survive off, plant fibers, meat fibers, good quality fats, things like bone broths, all of that really beautiful traditional foods. That's what they survive off. They don't grow and multiply on carbohydrates and sugar and processed foods and Coca-Cola and sodas and all that kind of stuff. So every time you eat, you're making a choice to either grow your bugs or to deplete your bugs.
Yep.
And it's a very simple choice. And it's one that we need to be mindful of every time we're eating. And even every time with what we do in a day. Am I going to swim in a chlorinated pool or am I going to swim in the ocean?
Yeah.
There's two choices there that will significantly impact your microbial community in your body.
Yeah. I think if we can also just touch on for some mums who are not familiar even with terms like microbiome and so on, I think it's really useful to look at, they did the Human Genome Project and looking at just how much of us is actually bacteria, because we've grown up in an era where it's like, ew,
I know.
No germs, no bugs, no bacteria, everything.
Yeah.
So getting an understanding of just how much of us is actually bacteria, I think.
Yeah. It is phenomenal. And so from what we're understanding, and of course this changes every time a study comes out, so, where are we at the moment? But basically between 70 and 90%, so I'm encompassing all literature I've seen, is bacteria in our body. 70 to 90% of our body is bacteria. So the remaining, 10 to 30% is our DNA. And so we've always thought that our DNA is this, absolute, this is what dictates, drives, makes the decisions, does everything for us. But we now know that really it's this bacteria and the metabolites, so what they produce, and how they talk to these genes is what is the beauty about the human body, as opposed to the DNA does everything. So I find it really fascinating now when someone will come and work with Kultured Wellness and they'll talk to one of our practitioners, or they'll have a chat to me and they'll say, I just do not feel well all the time. I've had a colonoscopy, I've had an endoscopy, I've had this investigation and that investigation, I've checked this, this and this and this. And I sort of say to them, okay, but that's just checked function and structure. What about your bugs? You haven't looked at your bugs, and that is our whole body basically. What are they telling us? Because they're talking to the structure and function. So we better have a chat with them and find out what they're up to and who's who in the zoo and all that kind of stuff. And that's where the excitement happens, because of course we get some tests done and it's like, wow, I had no idea that this was going on, and I had all these, dudes living in here doing all of these things, and how significant they have been impacting my health. So yeah, that's such a great question, and so important to really clarify that, because Western medicine often looks at that real basic structure and function. So let's blend the two and do both, and then we know that we're covering everything.
Yeah, I read somewhere when they did the Human Genome Project, they worked out that we had the same number of genes as a nematode worm, which I think is fantastic. Love it.
That is so cool.
I know. Yeah. How good's that?
Well, yeah.
So it's our bacteria that actually makes us, that much more sophisticated than a nematode worm.
And that those metabolites, so what that bacteria creates, so, what they produce, which is even more exciting. And I think that, those metabolites are just so new to us about what they're creating and what they can do. So it's a classic watch this space. But yeah, I love that Human Genome Project. It's just, I went to see Dr. Rob Knight speak, who's one of the founders of that. And I was like, just to even keep up with him was, incredible.
He's done great TED Talks. If anyone wants to listen in, check him out. All right, let's bring it into the kitchen. This is this is the practical stuff. This is the what can we do as mums to love off our bugs.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is just get to know those simple things of what loves your bugs and detracts from your bugs. And that's pretty simple. So, we're talking about things like sugar and carbohydrates and processed foods. Water is big. Like if you're drinking chlorinated tap water, it's designed to kill off bacteria. That's why they put it in our tap water. And if we're all bacteria, what's it doing to us? So learn what's detracting from your microbiome, and then, obviously embrace what supports it. So our microbiome loves plant food. So we're going to have, a nice, rich, very loud noise, sorry. Wow. That's a fighter jet.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Ah.
Wow. That's the way things roll. So we want to make sure that we're nourishing those gut microbes with beautiful plant fiber. And very important that that's vegetables. So fruit is amazing, but, in traditional times, there wasn't this sort of Woolworths plethora of fruit on a platter and you could just take and take and take all day. Fruit still has sugar in it. And so that's still going to impact your gut, and those microbes. So we want to really focus on vegetables and a diversity of vegetables. So one of my beautiful idols, Dr. Terry Walls, she talks about trying per year to tick off 200 different diverse amounts of vegetables, spices, herbs, and see, can you get 200? That's pretty big, you know.
I'm in. I'm going to put a check on my wall. I like that.
Yeah. When she started saying 200 vegetables, I was like, I don't even know 200 vegetables. And then when she said the herbs and okay, I'm on. I can do that.
Have you started a checklist?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I started it last year. So, I interviewed her, I think it was last year, and she said it, and I'd heard her say it once before. I was like, right. And then it makes it a fun trip to the markets, right? Because you're like, well, what's that? And I need to tick it off on my list, so I better take it home and try it and see if I like it.
Love it.
That's so, and, you know, obviously really delving into using those plants and using those vegetables and all the different herbs and spices, and make it fun and creative, and really, you know, get back into the kitchen and spend time in the kitchen and embrace it, as opposed to seeing it as a chore.
Yep.
The other thing is, obviously, bone broth is just key to building a robust gut microbiome, and especially for our ancestral strains. So, you know, those real foundational strains that we need in our gut. Bone broth has been really well documented in growing those. Yep. Fermented foods are obviously really easy to make. They're really cost effective to make. And you can just, you know, love up your gut so much and really dump in a whole lot of new microbes by every time you eat, thinking about what type of fermented foods can I include in this meal. Yep. So, you know, say for dinner time, if you've got kids especially, you know, we have this beautiful butcher that makes these amazing sausages for us, and, you know, there's nothing in them except the beautiful meat and some herbs, and sometimes we get some liver put in there. And then the plate will be, you know, a bit of protein, some fermented foods, so maybe a tablespoon of sauerkraut or some fermented beetroot. I'm a big fan of fermented beetroot. And then, you know, your plate has a robust amount of, a huge amount of vegetables, and all different types of vegetables. We know vegetables can be prebiotic in the fact that they can grow and help to feed those microbes. And so there's so many things that can be just so simple, you don't even realize that you're serving it up every day. You can have some coconut yogurt for breakfast. You can have a glass of kefir with your lunch, all of those sorts of things. And suddenly you've got a beautiful, diverse amount of food on your plate, and you're feeding that beautiful microbes in your gut during the day.
Can we overdo it with food?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got so excited about fermented food that I think at one point my whole diet was just ferments. It was terrible. Like, literally, I'd be like, I'll have yogurt for breakfast, and then I'll just eat like sauerkraut out of the jar for lunch. And then, you know, the same for dinner. And obviously it's designed as a condiment. And, you know, if you go too hard on one thing, like kombucha, for example, you're going to throw out that diversity. And our gut is an ecosystem, and everything has its place. And if something is overgrown, or if something is, you know, has got too much, then something else is going to suffer. And we don't want that to happen. We want everything to have its right spot, and the ecosystem is balanced. So very important to see fermented foods as condiments and not as your whole diet. Like,
as a visual, I like to think of when you see the way that the Japanese serve up food, and they often have a cute little square dish.
The bento sort of thing.
You know, some sort of fermented, and that's, you know, that's, if you've been to Japan, that's breakfast, lunch and dinner. They have these, you know, little, and that's how I visualize it when I think about how much.
It's just perfect. And the same in like Nepal, they have their thali plates where, you know, there's a big section for the vegetable curry, and like another section for the meat, and another section for the carbohydrates, you know, and and we could absolutely take a leaf out of those, you know, those traditional cultures that have been doing that for centuries, and they've got it right.
So when do we look at supplements versus food? When time to sort of think, well, maybe we need something different or more?
Yeah, so supplements, do you mean for nutrition or for probiotics? Yeah. So in my opinion, the only time that you would want to supplement with probiotics is when you have a clear picture of what's going on in your gut. Because we can really easily get it out of balance. It's so delicate. And so if you head off to the shops and you buy a probiotic and it's got heaps of a certain strain in it, if you don't know what's going on in your gut, you might actually be taking a strain that you've already got an overgrowth in.
Yeah.
And so if you take that, you could actually make the imbalance even worse.
Yeah, okay.
So, I really feel that the best way forward if you're struggling with your gut is obviously you work with a practitioner, you get a really complex, comprehensive test. And from there, you can then make that decision. What specific probiotics do I need to take to be able to create that balance again? Now, fermented foods are different. And generally, most people can dive on into fermented foods and it's great. You start small because they're really powerful. And if you start with fermented foods and you have a rumbly tummy or a little bit of diarrhea or some bloating, just peg it back a little bit and go slow until your body's used to it. You're really creating a new environment in there. But if you react hugely to fermented foods and, it makes you sneeze or you get a rash from it or you get chronic diarrhea and you can barely stay awake and you fall asleep and, some people get, temperatures and all sorts of things. If that's you, then you do need to get that test and even find out some people have to use specific fermented foods or not have them for a little while until they get that balance right again.
Yeah. Who's do you go to organise these tests?
Yeah. So there are very specific integrative doctors and also functional doctors who can organise those tests. Naturopaths can organise the gut tests as well. And some nutritionists can also support you around organising those tests. So, you don't always have to go to a doctor. There are the basic sort of tests that you can get at your GP that will look at your parasites, so some really basic parasite testing, and that's very cost effective, often bulk billed, and you can start there. Yeah. And then if you move up to the more comprehensive testing, it is a bit more expensive, but from my experience, it can save you thousands of dollars in the end. Because you have a clear, direct path of what to do as opposed to trying this supplement, this ferment, this, that. And I spent a fortune before we got some really, really comprehensive tests and found out what was really going on. So, the naturopaths and GPs, integrative GPs and functional doctors will be able to really support you around getting those tests.
Yeah, take some of the guesswork out of what's going on.
Yeah, you don't have time or money to be doing, to be wasting with that. So test, don't guess. Very important.
Yeah. So I feel like there's going to be lots and lots of questions around autism and the work that you do and that can be done through gut health and improving gut health and autism. So is it something that particularly has to be caught when they're very little or, when we're looking at much older children? Is there, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so we know that developmentally, earlier intervention is absolutely, phenomenal at supporting children and it really does help. So the earlier you can make changes with diet and getting in those right supports, the better. But I've also worked with children that, are 15 and that creates different challenges, obviously going through puberty and all those sorts of things. So it's never too late. I mean, I have people that I work with that are 70 and they're finding vibrancy at 70. So it's never too late, but the earlier you can start, the better. And, we have a biome in our mouth. And if that biome is out of balance, it really does dictate the kind of foods that we crave.
Yeah.
So as children grow and develop, if they can have this microbiome in their mouth that loves vegetables and loves, you know, the diversity of the fermented foods and the sour and tart taste, that's going to carry them through for the rest of their lives. And so if you can start, you know, that from a very early age, it makes such a huge difference. Yeah.
Just thinking about the number of women that, you know, mums 40 plus that I work with, trying to get them onto fermented foods, and the struggle. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Changing that palate, it just takes persistence and time.
Yeah. And
what are your tips on that?
Well, my tips are very much around that mental state of, I am in a bug war here and I'm trying to change that bug war, and those little dudes are not going to get the better of me.
Yep.
And so then it becomes, you know, about this is the change that I want for my life, and I just have to ride on through this and suck it up, you know. So you know, obviously you can do a lot of things to change what happens in your mouth and the state of the microbes in your mouth to speed things up, like oil pulling or tongue scraping or, you know, a peroxide wash. And that will very, very quickly change the environment in the mouth biome. So then your new microbes in your mouth embrace the fermented foods and those different tastes, and you can move along a lot quicker.
I just had a peroxide wash. That's not something I know.
Yeah. So it's okay. It's okay. A lot of, you know, integrative holistic dentists use it. It's so it's a great little tip of just getting this tiny little peroxide and obviously a lot of water, and you dip your toothbrush in and get in there. So it's very, very, very effective. Very effective. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. And then it just, you know, once you change that, then you request and you taste food differently, and you have those senses on your tongue and taste buds on your tongue. So, but I always say to people, if they don't like ferments, telling you something about what you need to do. So it's a very good indication that the balance is wrong.
Which one do you start with? What's, you know, for first timers, what do you recommend?
Yeah. So once again, with the kids, I always start with the yogurt and put their yogurt that they're used to, and put a little bit of, you know, say the Kultured Wellness yogurt in there and stir it through, and they don't even taste it, and slowly but surely you change the balance. So then suddenly they're having the completely beautiful, nourishing yogurt. Yeah. And for adults, I start with the kefir first, because it's very hydrating. It's good for the liver, and adults have generally had a bit more of a bash with those sorts of things. And they like to put it in smoothies and, you know, hide it in with maybe some spring water or some sparkling water and those sorts of things, just to make it a bit easier. So, yeah. And obviously when the kids are really young, like if you're introducing it as a first food around the first year or into, the second year, then the yogurt, because it's got more of those bifidose strains, it's really good for developing a younger microbiome.
New bubby tummies.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's absolutely perfect. I think I've pretty much touched on everything. Is there anything in your heart that you feel like we haven't touched on?
I think it's just more for families and whoever's in the kitchen, whether that's mum or dad. It changes in every family these days. You just have to spend time in your kitchen cooking and make that the hub. And if that's not your intention and what you're going to set out to do, it's going to be really difficult, and you're going to find it really hard. You're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to get really overwhelmed. So with your lifestyle choices, that really has to be up there as one of your big foundational choices. And once you're comfy with that, and you know that that's really true to you, everything becomes really easy. But if you fight against, I'm always in the kitchen, I'm always cooking, I feel like I'm a slave to then you'll always be feeling like you're up against it, and you might not get the changes that you want to get using food as medicine. So I just think that's really, I see a lot of mums really giving it a good go, but they still are trying to do 1,001 things, or not allowing time in the kitchen and embracing that as something they do in a day, and they leave it till 10 o'clock at night to, whip a few things up. And yeah, that's a really big thing that I see, that when that mindset shifts, it's a super successful change for families.
Yeah. Oh, I can't, I hear about these houses being built in America, and I'm not sure if it's in Australia as well. They're just built with no kitchen now. And it absolutely blows my mind. I cannot imagine,
Yeah.
my kitchen in the living room. The kitchen's right there. It's the center of the house, and everybody eats together, and that's just the core of my joy. That's my happy place.
Yeah, and I think let's celebrate that, as opposed to I'm being constricted and as a mum to just being in the kitchen, and I don't get an opportunity to shine because I'm in the kitchen all the time. And we need to change that around. You really do, because not only do you shine when you're in the kitchen because you're nourishing your body, so you shine, but everyone else around you that you're nourishing then starts to shine. So
yeah, absolutely. I know you've got a lovely gift for our audience. Can you just take a minute to tell them what that is?
Yeah, so my first book that we wrote, or that I wrote, is called The Functional Fermented Nutrition Book, and it's all about starting out with your fermented foods journey. So there's a great section at the front about lots of questions that we get asked all the time. Oh my gosh, how long do I leave it for? What happened? It's doing this, it's doing that. And all of those things that are really scary when you first start fermenting. So there's some great, sort of Q&A at the front there, and some, broth recipes and basic ferment recipes, and even a cheeky cheesecake in there with yogurt as the middle. So yeah, we've got that as a PDF that we'd love to share with everyone, so they can just jump on and have a look at it and start to explore those recipes.
That's absolutely perfect. We'll try and avoid some of those exploding jars.
You know how many photos I get? I love it.
Well, I think it's a rite of passage. You've got to do it once.
Yeah, just not with beetroot, which is what I did. White woolen rug, just don't. Oh.
Yeah, no, that sounds Instagram worthy, I reckon.
It so was.
Keep it real. That's lovely. Thank you so much for your time today, Kirsty. It's been a fantastic interview, and there's so much gold in there. It's very valuable information. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've just had a great time chatting with you. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. All right, that's it for this interview, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye for now.